maybe it's decades or centuries ago, who actually spoke the gospel to someone in my lineage that has changed the trajectory of my family? I'll never know the answer to that question, but that person had no idea when they spoke the gospel to my ancestor. The number one thing that modern believers are missing in their life is good discipleship, spiritual mothers and fathers. And so what I want to do today, it's not really a passage, it's more of a theme that we see with Paul that's going to be shown here in Philippians chapter 2 is the spiritual fatherhood that Paul shows Timothy and Epaphroditus and probably many others that we don't know about. We see here that he talks about Timothy and how he sees him as a spiritual son. And then he goes on to talk about Epaphroditus, who is a brother and fellow worker and fellow soldier in the faith, who has been working with Paul and learning from Paul. And so often in the modern church, we're not actually doing what we've been called to do in the Great Commission. We're not making disciples, we're making converts. And that's not what we were called to do. We weren't called to bring people to salvation and then just leave them to fend for themselves. We should be making disciples, but unfortunately, so few people have actually been discipled in the faith. They don't know how to disciple other people. They've never been discipled themselves. And so we have a lot of people wanting to be discipled, but nobody actually doing the discipling. What does it actually look like to disciple somebody? First of all, you have to spend time with them. That's the number one thing you can do to disciple somebody is spend time with them. If you spend time with them, you're going to talk about life. You're going to talk about the good things, the bad things, the easy things, the hard things. If you're the one who is more spiritually mature, if you're the one who is looking to disciple somebody, you should be asking questions like, hey, you told me a couple weeks ago that you were struggling with this. How's that going? Just asking probing questions, trying to get an idea of where they're at in their walk and what they're dealing with. So you give them time, you actually care about their life and ask them questions about their life, and then you're there for them. Sometimes people need you when it's inconvenient for you. But if you're going to disciple other people, you're going to have to give up your time, your money, your energy, whatever. You may have to give that up for that person to help develop them into a mature believer. Think about it like this, and this is something Greg talked about in the sermon on Sunday. You may disciple somebody, you may never see the fruit. You might see them come to know the Lord, or you might see some little things, but you may never truly see the fruit. But what if 3 generations from now, because of your ministry to one person, the world's changed? As much of my family as I know have been believers in years past. Now, how dedicated they are, I don't know. Most of them I barely knew, but I do know they were believers. I know they went to church. And so I'm literally sitting here asking myself, who is that person, maybe it's decades or centuries ago, who actually spoke the gospel to someone in my lineage that has changed the trajectory of my family? I'll never know the answer to that question, but that person had no idea that when they spoke the gospel to my ancestor, that one day I would be sitting in ministry as a pastor because of their ministry. You could have that same impact. We don't always get to see the seed that we plant grow to a fully flourishing plant, but if we're not willing to take the time to be fathers and mothers to those who are younger than us in the faith, we're all living in a little bit of a disobedience. When we choose to not disciple people, when we're perfectly capable, when we're, as Paul would say, hey, you're no longer supposed to be on milk, you should be on meat by now. When we're mature believers and we choose not to disciple somebody that is living in active disobedience with the Word of God, we have been called to make disciples. When we live in disobedience, what do we call that? Sin. And so for us to know that we should be making disciples, that we should be pouring into people who are less mature in the faith than us, or the next generation, or whatever it may be, when we know that, and you know that because you're watching this video, when you know that and you choose not to do it, that's living in disobedience. Delayed obedience is disobedience. You may say, one day I'll do it. There's a good chance you should be doing it right now. And so I want to ask you, are you making disciples? Or are you simply going to church? Maybe you're making converts, but what do you do with those converts? Do you just let them go off on their own and try to figure it out? Or do you actually try to invest in their life? It's really simple, guys. All people need is somebody to care about them, to be able to ask questions to somebody, and to pray with people and give them guidance along the way as they try to figure out this Christian walk. So it's not that hard. So you can do it. And maybe you need to be discipled. Don't wait for somebody to approach you. Go find somebody to disciple you. People are busy. They're not always thinking the same way you are. Don't hesitate to ask somebody to disciple you and to help you grow. And that'll be beneficial for your walk in the long run. As always, guys, I want to encourage you to come visit us at 306 Burns Road, Hope Church in Carrollton. We have service at 10 o'clock on Sundays and 6:30 on Wednesdays. And so I'll see you there.